Today's guest has a front row seat to what's really happening in manufacturing right now. Rachel Zepernick is the general manager at Thomas, the team behind thomasnet.com, where manufacturers and industrial buyers connect every day. From that vantage point, Rachel sees trends, challenges, and shifts across the industry as they're unfolding. I am excited to talk with her about what she's seeing, her leadership journey, and what it's like to lead through constant change in an industry that matters a lot more than most people realize. Rachel, I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to chat with you.
Yay. Well, to get us started, I think it'd be great for anyone listening to let's talk a little bit about what Thomas is and the history of the organization and what you're doing there.
Yeah. Thomas has been around for over 125 years. Today is actually our 128th year birthday. So happy birthday to Thomas.
Fantastic.
And we have always been that kind of connector in the industry, connecting buyers and suppliers and looking to grow those relationships and grow the industry. And that's changed from, the books 100 years ago to a CD-ROM phase. And now a digital phase. Thinking through how we can connect buyers who are looking for, their shortlist, they should start with Thomas, and suppliers who are looking to access that industry-specific buyer base. That's what we're here for, is to, be that matchmaker in the industry. This is a really interesting time for Thomas. I think a lot has changed in search, in automation, and how LLMs are used to digest information and how we as humans are digesting information. So really pivotal time for Thomas to think about how to improve our UX, how to improve our search experience, how to improve our data, to give our suppliers and buyers exactly what they're looking for and help continue to be that matchmaker in the industry.
That's 128 years, that's a long time.
Yes.
Long time.
Such a great history.
If you think about the span of what you just told us, from paper to CD to online, and then there's all kinds of other services you're helping manufacturers with. So it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And I think we've always had this kind of heritage that we count on. And you can see that in the people that we employ. And when you're working with us as a client, we have a lot of engineers on staff. A lot of people have been working with us for many, many years and really understand the industry. And we work with thousands of clients in the industry. So have that kind of industry knowledge as we think through your marketing strategies and our own ability to connect the industry. And we build on that heritage. In World War II, we were deemed so necessary to the North American economy that we were exempt from paper rationing laws. And we really think about that heritage and how to grow ourselves now of continuing to be the kind of growth engine for the industry and that connector of the industry.
So interesting. And how did you find yourself at Thomas? What is your journey to coming to Thomas? And, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I guess I'll start later and then go back to childhood. I came from Angie, which is formerly Angie's List and Home Advisor. So another marketplace similar in connecting buyers and suppliers in the home improvement industry. I ran enterprise sales strategy and operations. So really thinking through how to solve customer pain points, especially the larger customers at Angie, and how to grow the business, especially in a down demand environment. And how to help make that connection and think through products and services and partnerships that can help build that. So I have kind of taken that experience now in the last year and thought through how to leverage that in the manufacturing industry and leverage some of those. You see a lot of the improvements in UX on the Angie site, thinking through how we can do that on our site to help, again, better that connection. And when a buyer comes to our site, they're getting what they're looking for. Ultimately, when a supplier's on our site, they're looking for buyers and they're looking for high quality buyers. So the better experience we can create for both of those customer bases, the better both of our customers are using our site.
And that's crucial right now, right? We think about supply chain and people are needing to pivot and find different suppliers or different things. Or, I think you have some stories in your history too about some famous, different companies that have found their ability to get the contract manufacturing done through your platform, correct?
100%. We have a bunch of case studies on our site, and some that we just push through LinkedIn, so you can kind of hear some of those stories. But a ton of opportunity to expand your supply chain. There's a huge trend we're hearing about also in kind of the research when we talk to executives in the space. And some of the surveys we've done, this is such a big trend of, with all the macroeconomic environment with, finance hurdles and the year of the tariffs and more to come probably. And I think it was like 75% of our respondents in our survey said they raised prices and are expecting prices to raise again this year. It's a really volatile market, and it's so important to be investing in redundancy, investing in partnerships that can help create better lead times for you. When you do have a pricing hurdle with one, you have other options. Maybe in your bill of materials, you're thinking through redundant parts or alternate components. So really thinking through that supply chain resiliency is like top of mind for the executives we talk to. And that's what we're here for is you want a short list, you start with Thomas. You come to Thomas, you're going to be able to find who you're looking for. And for our supplier clients, we're attracting the right client for them to our site and the right buyer to connect with them and find them.
It's great helping them navigate how to make sure they are being able to be found, right?
Exactly.
There's so much technology changing and moving, and I think it's an amazing service that you're providing, for the industry in general. So I think it's huge, and it translates to everyone, right? I mean, I think I remember when people really didn't talk a lot about manufacturing in general, right? We weren't in the news. I remember those days. And also when, supply chain wasn't necessarily a word people thought about. And now I think it's probably part of everybody's, vocabulary at this point in time.
Definitely.
So so interesting. Well, so take me back. So from Angie's List to Thomas.
Yes.
And what tell us about the Rachel who ended up in Angie's List.
Yeah. I guess going way back, I've always kind of liked working. I feel like I always enjoyed being independent. I like being self-sufficient. I hate handouts. I don't like asking for things that I know I can do myself, which may be a flaw now working on that. But I was 8 on a vacation with my family and we were hiking and we came across a moose skeleton and I created a museum, 25 cents for entry to, see the moose skeleton. I was very interested in biology and science at the time. So, I think that's always been kind of ingrained in me. Thank you to my parents for whatever got me there. And I've been working since I was 13 or 14. I was a cashier and a waitress and scooped ice cream at Ben and Jerry's. So always kind of wanted to be self-sufficient and work hard.
I have to say that's the most unique first job ever that I've heard. That your entrepreneurship, kind of started with a moose skeleton museum. I think it's pretty awesome. And I love the curiosity and the science and the STEM, all that I'm hearing in there. So I just had to give that comment. Keep going.
Yeah, no, I was always very interested in STEM. And I think that shifted into more math related topics as I grew up. But it was very focused on science in the beginning. And I was always fascinated by fossils and dinosaurs. So you can see that in my early childhood. But I was very lucky and fortunate and grateful to be to have kind of a secure and loving household. But it was also just chaos. I'm one of 4. We're similar in age. My little brother and sister are twins. We're all tall and loud and talking over each other and had 100 activities and none of them were the same, like my poor parents. So I think with that and this kind of grit and interest and working very hard and also athletics. I always played sports. Those were my activities. And I was a good but never star athlete. So I think all of this kind of together built comfort with constructive feedback. I got that a lot early in the athletics world. Calmness in chaos. I may not have perfect information or a perfect plan, and that's okay. And ruthless prioritization. There is so much going on, and that's okay. So I think I sort of built some of the things that I think make me a good leader today early, just in my childhood home. So I'm grateful for those experiences, still very close with my siblings and parents, which is nice too. And then transitioning to work, post college, I went into IT, finance, and procurement. So learned a lot about negotiation, a lot about, first exposure to P&L and first exposure to building rapport cross-functionally and having to speak the language and know enough. I'm not going to be an engineer and know the answer as an engineer. And, I'm not a CFO and I don't know the answer there. But how do I speak the language of those two people to help bridge that gap? So great early exposure. But I knew pretty quickly procurement was not the route I wanted to go down. I chose business school as a way to transition out and switch careers. I think we discussed whether that's the right path for everyone, but it was the right path for me. And I wanted to shift into something more kind of growth focused and top line focused. So I went into strategy consulting. Thought I'd give it 2 years to see what I want to be when I grow up. Better part of a decade later, I was still there. But I dedicated quickly to the industrials practice. Focused a lot on home improvement, which I think got me to Angie. But it was just a lot of reps in managing teams. It was a different team per project. I think I did like 60 or 70 projects in my almost decade there. And I loved it. It was very hard work, a lot of hours, but very smart people. You're learning about a new business each time. You're thinking through the specific customer pain points and how to solve them and how to grow the business. I loved B2B. I think B2C sounded sexier and it was cooler products that I might be using every day, but there's such interesting problems and disruption opportunities in the businesses that have been around for a lot longer. So I loved that, and a lot of innovation that maybe you don't hear about every day that I loved. But I got poached away to Angie, pre-partner, and very grateful for that experience and to get kind of closer to operations, closer to sales. I think a lot of like non-sales leaders will say they don't want to do sales, but every leader, when you get more senior enough, you have to be close to the customer and you have to be close to the pain points and you have to care about go-to-market and the messaging and what you're selling. So I'm appreciative to my experience at Angie to kind of bring me back to that operating role.
Fantastic. And now you found yourself at this sort of linchpin spot in manufacturing, right? Yes. And what do you think about manufacturing in general being involved in this manufacturing space? Yeah.
It's such an interesting space. Again, been around forever, to your point, kind of quietly. You don't hear about it in the news every day. And then all of a sudden, the past year and 5 years, a lot more in the news and at the forefront of all the tariff hurdles.
Yep.
But I think it's a really interesting time. I think there's so many trends around automation and AI that are so interesting in this industry and that we're not just talking about anymore. I think our survey was something like 85% of our survey respondents said they were investing 6 to 7 figures this year in automation. 50% almost said they were already experiencing ROI from what they've invested already. So I think this is a really critical time to shift from we're talking about how to automate and how to think through things. And there's some robotic solutions to like every role, there's something we can do there. To be more efficient.
And I think almost every manufacturing leader is at least toying these things around in their mind. How do we do this, and how do we determine what makes the most sense, and where do we go from there? Tell me a little bit. So you talked about a survey there. Tell me a little bit about the survey and who you surveyed, and give us a little more of some of the results that you found are very interesting.
Yeah, we do a couple surveys. We do one with our parent company Xometry, where we survey global executives in the space.
Okay.
So a lot of trends that we heard there. Would love to talk about those in automation, in focusing on the customer, what the customer cares about, and supply chain resiliency are kind of the big three that we heard there. And then the other survey we do is in conjunction with the Women in Manufacturing Association. It's a great association. And a lot of incredible leaders that I've met at the conference, including some of yours, in the fall. And we talk a lot about trends in the industry. And we interview both men and women, although skews heavy to women. And we try to see where there are differences in the kind of response from women and the response from men. And what are some unique things that we're seeing. And a lot of the concept we heard there was also around automation and investments in the space, and what that's doing for the skills gap between, what we need for the industry and who's coming into the industry. And associated with that, the differences between men and women entering the industry, how they found manufacturing, are they happy in the industry? And there's a lot of very cool data and interesting data about, women in manufacturing and how underrepresented we are. And I think more broadly then, we've started to think through and look at some of the research on how do you solve this problem? And sure, I think, targeting women in the industry is one great way to do that. We're underrepresented. So you want to solve a labor gap is a great way to do it. But I think there's other ways too.
Yeah, well, so women in manufacturing is always special to my heart. My company is a member of the organization. I'm a past national chair, and I just think they do some great work. A lot has happened since I got involved early on. So let's talk a little. Like, what are you seeing? And we can start from their vantage point, and I'd love to go into then anything you saw from the global leaders as well. Labor shortages, women in the industry. Are we making headway on that? And if there are tips or best practices that are working to attract more women or more people in general to our ranks, which we need. I feel it too.
Manufacturing has like an image problem. And I felt this even at Angie. I spoke about this a couple of times too. There's just a skilled labor gap and a kind of a skilled labor shortage in a lot of these like trade industries. And it's totally a stigma-related, image-related thing. When you get a STEM degree, you're thinking about things, and you're not really thinking about how that might, be leveraged in some of these massive industries that are lucrative and so important to the American economy and the global economy. So that's unfortunate. So I think we need to work on that, and we can talk through some of that. But we're making some headway, but not enough. I think it's about 50% of the U.S. workforce is female. I think it's just under that. About 30% in manufacturing, so a little underrepresented. And if you think about the talent pool, like the next generation of talent, I think over 60% of associate degrees and over 50% of master's degrees, if you kind of go up the chain in post-secondary education, are women. So if you think about if you're looking for people who have post-secondary degrees to do some of these, more automation or data science or robotics type roles, a big pool of women to target. And even if we expand beyond gender, I think it's like 71% of boomers are white, 54% of millennials are white, 50% of Gen Z is white. It's starting to get more and more diverse. I think as a company, if you're not thinking about, underrepresented or historically underrepresented communities and how you can target those people to work at your company, how you can retain those people and attract them to your company, and frankly, like build awareness, you're missing out. That's a huge pool of talent. So I think that's a really important thing to think about.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity there. Yeah. And I think the efforts to expand the pool and try to attract more people in is great for attracting people in general, right? Yeah. Like it's such a win-win there. And we were talking about this a little bit before we came on air. I mean, it kind of speaks to your thought of, you have an MBA, I have an MBA, but we in our roles know that's not the path for everybody. And there's some really great paths. I know at our company at American Crane, you can have a great career, make a great living in the skilled trades, and other avenues that don't necessarily require those advanced degrees. Or I feel like sometimes it's not thought about the overall orchestra of what I like to call manufacturing, of all the different instruments, right, that are playing, and the different parts, from your accounting to your engineering to your manufacturing floor to your, people out in the field doing service work. It's such a rich orchestra. I guess I'm using my music metaphor today. I love that. And it comes with challenges of getting everybody to play the same song. But what are your thoughts around this and this idea of MBA or not MBA, skilled labor, and trying to determine what is the right thing for each individual? Yeah.
Well, going back, I see this like every day with my kids. I have a 5.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and they're obsessed with building with their hands and STEM, and we're a Lego family, and we have Legos all over our house. And my son's obsessed with them. He's doing, I did an 8-year-old set this weekend myself, and he's so proud. He's building all this, creativity and using his hands. And my daughter's even starting to build with the regular Lego instead of the Duplos.
Exciting.
Love magnetiles, all the things that I have all these pictures every day from their daycare of building with magnetiles and using their hands and doing art. And then like something happens in the high school time frame, and we go from I want to be a construction worker, I get that every day, to like naming the different equipment. This morning he said, or yesterday rather, he said, yard cranes are my favorite cranes. Tell Karen, literally. So I think there's something that happens in that sort of middle school, high school time frame where we push people towards everyone towards degrees and away from using their hands, or industries that use their hands. And to your point, if you think about manufacturing and the trades, there are so many roles within those industries, and we kind of stereotype them. If you go that route, you have to do factory floor, which is definitely one option and a great option for many people who want to work with their hands. But there's so many other spectrums you could go in the industry. So I think that's kind of disappointing. I think, again, that's that image problem. I think the number one way to solve this, I feel, is kind of challenging those in the industry to help partner with organizations and your local community to change that. Love that. And I think about, partnering with STEM programs, local universities, local community colleges, local high schools. When I first joined Thomas, actually, I met a client. I went to their factory, did a factory tour, and I met a high school student who was doing like a summer program, rotational program, doing 4 different activities on the factory. What a great way to get hands-on experience. And if you live it and you see it, and you look around and you see people that are like you, and they're welcoming, you start to see those as options. And
I think it's becoming more prevalent. We do a lot of work. There's a local school called Thaddeus Stevens that we're working with, creating a internship for our shop floor.
It's incredible.
I hadn't really considered that before, and I love that you brought that up. That it's a chance to provide opportunities for people to see what it's about. Yeah. And I'm sure you see this with other manufacturers. Often it can be a pathway to further education, right? I mean, our current, I'm CEO of American Crane, our current president of American Crane started out as an electrician on our shop floor and continued his education on and moved up, through the ranks over time. So I feel like it can be more of a door opening and then become a subject matter in that, if that's your passion. And if you want to move on and learn more skills and do whatever, there's a lot of opportunity, and often that education is paid for if it's something you choose.
Exactly. And think about like a Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, same kind of path, worked her way up. I think you see a lot of those examples of, if you can get in early and get your foot in the door and really experience the role and experience the people around you, it opens up a lot of opportunities for you. And to your point of MBA or not, or your question of MBA or not, I think it's very personal decision. It's a very expensive decision. So you have to make sure it's like the right path for you, and what do you want out of that? And, do you think that it's going to be useful in what you're looking for coming out of the MBA program? Or any advanced degree
program, I think.
Period.
Same thing.
What are you looking for? I don't think it's the right decision to just do it for fun or do it because someone said you should. For me, it was personally the right decision. I was looking to switch careers, and I think that's something that's doable outside of an MBA program, but also a great way to learn about other industries and meet other people who can help teach you, and you have companies coming on site to you get your foot in the door there with the interview process. So great way to switch careers.
Like it scratches that curiosity itch that you had 100%. That we heard about in childhood. That I think pursuing continuous learning, I can just get that sense from you.
Definitely, and I think that's important as a leader to constantly learn. But I've always kind of felt that way and enjoyed learning about new things. And I also didn't really know what I wanted to do. I think if you know the next career for you and the next path for you, it's a lot easier to target your search. I didn't really know, so it's a great way to kind of hone. And I think there's other things you can get from an MBA, in particular, a network for sure. But I know many people who don't have an MBA who have an incredible network. And I think that's more about, you also don't get handed the network. You have to work your network. You have to stay in contact with people. You have to give. You can't just take from your network. So I think that is one door opening thing from an MBA. And I think the third thing, which was monumental for me, but again, not everyone needs this path, is you develop, and I don't know if you experience this in your MBA as well, you develop that gut that is so important. And I think about the kind of not leader I was going into business school and this kind of very junior person who was high achieving and high potential, but was so shy. I didn't want to raise my hand. If I didn't have perfect or like 99% information, I'm not giving my opinion. To who I was afterwards, 500 classes later, 500 reps later of talking about companies and talking about problems and forcing myself, very uncomfortable for me. It was not my personality, but forcing myself to have an opinion, to debate, to raise my hand, to public speak, and if I didn't, I was getting cold called. So it was going to happen. And I think there are, again, other ways you can do that in your real life work. And I built on that skill set in consulting thereafter with so many reps. But those are just such important, comfort with limited information and building that gut. I felt like I really got that out of my MBA program and needed that to transition to more of a leadership path versus where I was before. I see a different human before and after. But again, I think there's real world experience in particular that can, build those reps, and sometimes better reps if you're, experiencing that day to day. But that was the path that I took.
No, I think it's great. Any chance we can have, whatever our craft is, or whatever it is that we're doing, to learn more or to get out of our comfort zone, but in a safe way, so we can keep trying things on. And I think it can both help you to realize, is it something that you're interested in doing? Obviously, you have found your passion for leadership and for the organization you're with. Now, I think in any field, it's a way to kind of just push yourself past that. I know it's at our company, we also really like to invest back in our people and training, regardless of where you're at. And I feel like anytime we're able to do that and open up a little nugget of learning and growth, it just it is such a great progression for everyone. I'd like to kind of pull you back for a minute.
Yeah.
Let's go back to this discussion of automation.
Yeah.
And I know you said that, it's really showing up for those in the survey and what you're seeing. Is there any, with that accelerator, I think a lot of us know automation is coming.
Sure.
We hear all about AI and how we're going to do that, and robots and all these different things. If for those out there that are in the manufacturing space that are trying to say, hey, how am I going to address this automation?
Yeah.
Have you seen anything that shows companies that are adapting well to integrating automation, or any tips for those of us that are trying to figure out how to angle or position our teams to start making some investments in this?
I think two things I'd say. One is like, where are we seeing in our survey results the kind of majority starting to invest? Because I think there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, that's interesting.
One is quality control. It's such a huge opportunity for data, for reducing human error. So huge space. Robotics, definitely. Process optimization, cybersecurity. And there's I think it's Rockwell Automation Survey that talked about this as well. They mentioned, what was the other space? Logistics, kind of big spaces where there's opportunity to leverage data and improve your solutioning. One other thing that was talked about a lot at the Women in Manufacturing event, and someone at one of the universities that studies automation in manufacturing focused on any activity where it's mundane and repetitive is just ripe for robotics. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily replacing the person. You're probably upskilling the person to manage the robot. But that they're ripe for human error. You often have a lot of churn because it's such a mundane role.
Yeah.
So those are kind of opportunities on the factory floor. If you start to think through where there might be use cases for the data and the analytics and the robotics, those are probably the best use cases that we're hearing about. And I actually read something in Forbes like a year ago that stuck with me that said, you shouldn't be worried about AI taking your job. You should be worried about somebody who knows how to use AI taking your job. And I believe that. And that brings me to my second point, which is I think saying, oh, data will figure it out. Oh, the robotics guy will figure it out. Oh, engineers will figure it out. I don't think that's the right culture. And that's not what we're hearing from our clients and our research. You really need a culture of automation. Everyone in sales, in operations, in marketing, in product and tech, et cetera, has opportunities to use automation in their day-to-day. And that it buys you time, which is like leadership hack 101.
Absolutely.
Is like any time you can get throughout the day. Think about like the sales team being able to record a call and summarize your, what happened in the call and what are your follow-ups and, what's the right messaging and being able to share that with the team so quickly. That saves so much time. Or research a company if you're, reaching out or whatever it is. So I think that culture is really important. You want to find tools that are easy to use, that you don't need to be a coder to use, and instill a culture in your company that everyone should be leveraging these tools every day.
And I think you can, we're trying to do that at American Crane. And, I think it also can be wrapped into the idea around innovation and continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean that you have to be like AI only, but if you put it in that space of where are there opportunities for improvement in our business, this happens to be a tool that we're willing to consider, that's a great starting point, I think.
And it can be simple. It can be Gemini or ChatGPT. We're a Google Suite company, so we've been using a lot of Gemini, and it's great. And it helps me every day, take this paragraph and make it shorter, longer, formal, nicer. It really can help you build what, instead of Googling synonyms, it can help you kind of build that. It still needs to be edited and in your tone. But
I really am not using the Google search much anymore, which is remarkable. I really am feeling that I'm always using my ChatGPT to give me sort of the short list. And then I might go out and then do a bit more. But it is kind of an interesting change that is sort of naturally happening when you start using these tools. Yeah,
I think it's funny. Like humans are like changing how we're experiencing and reviewing information. I think it depends on the use case. There are use cases, and I'll use like a personal example, like wedding planning. I did not have a wedding planner. I planned the whole thing. but I wanted to know every detail. I didn't want a short list. I didn't want to know 3 options.
Got it.
I want to know 100 and then narrow it down to the 3 and then talk about it with my husband and decide what we were going to do. And I use that in some use cases in my day-to-day. Some use cases, I just want the summary and it's not worth my time to do all the research. It kind of depends on the use case. I found a lot of my day-to-day of, I want to like research a company or know a little more about, this little thing. Definitely ChatGPT, Gemini, it's going to get me there. But often in the who I want to reach out to, or, maybe I'm looking for a software to support something we're doing. I'll start on Google. I'll leverage the ChatGPT. I'll also leverage the ChatGPT and Gemini's to get me more information. So I have my shortlist created for my Google search.
Come with that's
it's
great.
Like amazing tools, and you can use this for like vacation planning too.
Right.
I want to go in this time period to these to this area. What countries would be a good idea? What cities would be a good idea, and why? And here are my criteria. And I'll like create this like amazing spreadsheet for you, basically.
I think what you're doing is what we've heard from some of our other guests, and what I've heard out in a lot of the AI. I'm a curious person as well, and I'm always trying to at least stay aware and abreast. Is that you're building kind of like this great prompt to then put into to
and you've just given prompts, for sure.
Yeah,
and I think it's also data enriching. So you might get your shortlist from Google, or you might create a shortlist from Google, or get your full list from Google. But getting more information about that list using automation is a huge way to enrich.
Definitely.
I think about that at Thomas too, of, we're a list. So when you go to thomas.com and how do we give more information and summarize that information in ways that are helpful, and let you ask us in your tone and your voice what you're looking for, and we can help you hone and not hone that list too early too. So we're thinking about how to leverage LLMs in our own platform. And you see this in all the, you see it in Angie and Yelp, and, investing in automation and AI to help think through how, humans as consumers and businesses are digesting information.
Very, very interesting. I mean, 2 other trends that, you mentioned before was this idea, I think you said, around being close to your customer, and then supply chain resilience. Just, is there anything in those 2 topics that you think are worth noting for listeners about just what you're seeing and what might be important to stay in front of or keep learning and paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of trends right now that are macroeconomic level with pricing and tariffs, like we mentioned, are driving people towards this kind of supply chain resiliency. And that can mean developing those extra partnerships. I think it's like 85% of our survey noted they're working on strategic partnerships and often digital partnerships to help with these types of relationships. Reshoring is still a big trend. I think it's huge, like 50% of our respondents, or almost 50%, said they were actively reshoring a facility. 30% said they already have. Again, you're not reshoring everyone necessarily, but some kind of resiliency in lead time is so important.
What a boost to the U.S. economy in there. I mean, that we're certainly in my industry, which is supportive of manufacturers, we're certainly seeing that. So it's just creating more opportunity, but also more pressure, right, on the supply chain, and to get all the pieces as they come online, because it takes a little while to reshore and build yourself back up again.
Definitely a big investment, and can be risky. And I think one of the other things we hear along with this is with what the customers are looking for, and especially our manufacturing clients, what their customers are looking for, is that transparency as well. What a great opportunity for automation too. But you're used to, as a consumer, this Amazon-like speed, and also this Amazon level transparency of when something's arriving. Is it on time? Is it not? Why did the price change? That's starting to bleed into B2B. And we're hearing that a lot. Yes, quality matters. Yes, price transparency matters, and stability would be nice. And yes, faster lead times, but also transparency across those things.
No surprise.
And again, investment in automation and data and analytics to help provide that in real time, versus having to, follow up and create that, hey, where is it? Hey, where is it? Conversation. So I think those are really important themes we're hearing about.
Interesting. To pivot a little bit more, I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership. And, is there, as we've talked a little bit about your journey, where you got to where you are today. And, over time, has your leadership style evolved over time? I know we talked a little bit about your MBA and learning in there, but as you have gotten into industry, and is anything in there, and do you have any like leadership hacks or habits or anything that those listening could possibly learn from you and take? I'm always looking for
me too.
A nice trick and a hack.
Exactly.
A life hack too is fine as well.
I wouldn't say my style has changed, but it's built. Again, I'm kind of always learning, always trying to build that gut and build how I think about things and be open to feedback and open to change and open to healthy debate. So I've gotten more and more comfortable with that, and worked in a lot of those skill sets I think are so important for leaders I value, and like my mentors and my former bosses, in comfort in a room, and comfort with discomfort, and comfort with limited information. It's never perfect, and even if it's perfect, two people might look at it in two different ways. So I kind of building on those skill sets over time and with reps and experience. And then leadership hacks. I feel like all of my hacks, they're life hacks and leadership hacks, are all about just like time. Yeah. How do you find more time in your week? And I think automation is definitely one of those. And I use that, as we mentioned before, in my professional life. I also use it in my personal life. My daughter has an anaphylactic egg allergy. I've just found a chicken meatball recipe for no eggs. How do I substitute? So little things like that I think are useful. Whereas before I would have had to reach out to the allergy community to try to find those ideas. So very important. Also, like other little things, like I'm trying to get more steps in. I just got a walking pad. If I'm writing an email, why am I not walking at 2.5 miles an hour writing an email? I can drink a coffee. It's so slow, but I'm getting my steps in. So things to kind of multitask in a way that's healthy. I block my social media. I was in denial that I'm not addicted. Full on addiction. It's so hard. I mean, kids are addicted to screens.
It's
adults
a lot.
It's so much.
And, we are getting a dopamine kick every time something pings or makes a noise.
Yes.
And the more you use it, the more you want to go back. I'm with you. I have cut the cord with social media.
Really?
Also, I have
amazing.
I have no pings on my phone. I have no social media. And it's I mean, we're on a podcast, and we're actually kind of talking about that. Here we are asking people to go online and look, but I think we have to control how we interact with those things, or it will just take over.
Yes.
And they're made to want us to just keep scrolling, keep looking,
and all the algorithms are feeding you that. So I don't completely block. I do find some value in small doses, but I physically block. So I had an app where you could block on your phone different applications, but you can override it. So I got the Bloom card. I don't know if you've heard of this.
What's a Bloom card?
It's like $35, and you can't use whatever apps you put to be blocked by Bloom unless you swipe a card. And the card is in the kitchen in our everything drawer. And I'm in my office. I have to physically stand up and go step into the room and press a couple buttons and swipe the card, or I can't. And it really created a physical barrier to, I can't just, I have a minute, I'm swiping. Oops, 30 minutes went by.
I love that.
Usually this was happening at like midnight. I'm trying to go to bed, and here I am with blue light in my face, scrolling. So I think creating kind of tricks to keep you from doom scrolling, I think are really important. And you can get a couple quick fixes without needing this long-term social media view.
Bloom card is great. My thing is, I don't sleep with my phone next to me.
Amazing.
Yeah, I have the way my home is set up. My bathroom is right there. I can hear it in the bathroom, but it's charging in there, and I have my alarm go off, so I don't miss it. But it's not like right next to my head. Number one, I'm not getting all these sort of wireless signals, and there's a whole thing around all of that. But more importantly, I can't just grab it because it's hard. Yeah. It's hard. We're humans,
right? Exactly. I mean, other little things too, like buy an air fryer. I have an air fryer. I have two. We have one that's allergy free and one that's not. It's like a third of the time of an oven. It's amazing.
Really?
Yes, it's amazing.
Okay, I didn't know this.
Like from frozen, I'm making frozen salmon in like 13 minutes.
Oh wow!
And it's fresh and delicious, and it tastes good.
Okay.
So highly recommend.
Air fryer is.
Air fryers are like amazing.
Yeah, I actually had no idea that it cooked faster.
It is so fast, and like crispy and juicy and delicious. So.
And I think this also brings up an amazing thing. You're managing your company, but you're also managing your life. You're a mom and a wife, and you have all these things. And so we have to, I think it's really important to go back to one thing that you mentioned earlier, how do we manage our time, right?
Yeah.
We only get 168 hours in a week. We have to sleep 8 hours every day. And then we want to enjoy our lives and spend time with those we love. We have to be really smart about and intentional about how we're spending those other work hours, or I'll say homework kind of things. So I love these hacks for kind of making it go smooth and faster as much as possible.
I think the last one I'll add is like bulk processing. And I think about this in like personal life. I have to make my daughter's lunch. That's one of my tasks in the household. Instead of doing it every day, I like bulk make the lunches. Great. It's just quicker. I think about my professional life too. What works for me, if I have like a 30-minute window between a bunch of meetings, I get nothing done. I need like a 5-minute, brain cleanup. I check my email, I check my Slacks. Oops, there's 30 minutes. I've gotten nothing done. So I kind of bulk my meetings too, and bulk, more importantly, my focus time. And that really lets me, I reset, I redo my to-do list, I can dig in, and I actually get time to focus. For me, that's been very valuable. But again, all little hacks. I think
great advice.
Each person needs to find what works for them, but anything you can do to shave off 30 minutes, an hour, in these weeks is huge.
Adds up. Adds up. I think another thing I'd just be curious about, and I'm not sure the situation at Thomas, I think since you have such a large organization, you have people who are probably remote or in some of your offices and, all over. So now we've gone from this world where we used to be all in person, and now we're we're all remote for a little bit. Now we're kind of omni, trying to figure out, do you have any tips or tactics for leaders as we try to navigate how to lead in this, sort of new normal of having some people here, some people not? Any tips for anybody out there who's trying to deal with that?
That's a great question. I think a couple of things. I think as a leader, it's really easy to stay in the weeds, and we need to kind of take a breath of fresh air and get back to 10,000 feet sometimes, both alone and, ideate what we want to do, but also with your leadership team. Sometimes we do that at Thomas virtually, or sometimes we start virtually. We just had a little offsite about, what we want to be for, the better half of the second half of this year. We did one virtual, and we're meeting next week in person with leaders to talk through. So I do think there's a value to be in person and to getting that, remote leadership group, or, if you're managing a team, that team together every once in a while. It doesn't necessarily need to be every week. But that is really valuable. And I think when you build those personal relationships, your work relationship improves as well. And when you're working through hard problems, your personal relationship improves with those folks as well. So I do think there's being able to balance some of those virtual and in-person experiences, even if folks are remote. I think that's really valuable.
I think it's very important for sure. Another area where, I'd love to kind of just move us along here is as you think about the future. And we talked about trends that we're seeing, right? We've talked about things that we're seeing, kind of right now. But is there anything that excites you about the future of manufacturing or where we're headed? And, things that maybe leaders should be paying attention to that isn't quite so obvious?
I think data is probably the area I would focus. Again, as we think through automation opportunities, I think robotics pops to my mind first. And, even in my consulting years, a decade ago, I was visiting robotics facilities. I visited this one facility that had this huge robot that was moving heavy lemonade around for a fast food chain. It's super heavy and humans can't do it. So I think, we've started to think about how to use robotics tools for a while. But I think data is the one that's so important. And I think how to have better data that you're giving data models and automation tools is a really critical piece as well. If you give garbage to a model, it spits out garbage. So I think trying to identify opportunities in your company and to support your clients and solve their pain points where you can collect enough data and share that data in a way and spit it into automation and share it in a way that's useful and usable is a great way to think about what's next, a great way to tailor your product roadmap, a great way to solve pain points that your customers may not even know they have. So that's where I think I personally spend a lot of time thinking about, and I expect the industry to develop more and more tools to improve, whatever it is that they're doing. That's the area I would focus.
Yeah, and I think your insights are spot on in there, and that's great things for us to think about and to keep making sure we're moving towards. Something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and I'd like to come back to, is your love of Legos.
Yes.
And just to kind of wrap that into this idea of, what do you do to recharge and reset? And so tell me about your love of Legos and a little bit about how you and your family do that and what it brings to you.
Yes. It lets you plug out. I've always been a puzzler, and I love problem solving. And I think I naturally was, a builder. I liked Lincoln Logs when I was a kid, and So I think naturally moved towards Legos pretty quickly. But my husband and I both love Legos. I think the company has done a great job of creating solutions that are not just like, oh, I want that nostalgic toy I had when I was younger, but like the art and the flowers and things. Like our home has a lot of Lego flowers.
Kind of a great example of a company pivoting and becoming more than
they're almost bankrupt. They did this like
it's
amazing
pretty
pivot.
remarkable. Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting product that kind of keeps you engaged at any age. And any interest. There's Star Wars Lego and there's flowers. So really whatever you're interested in. And now I see it with my son and my daughter who love playing Legos. We engage all the time as a family, and it lets us recharge, and we can talk while we're building, but we can focus. And my son's so proud of himself when he's building, and it's such an amazing way to learn, an amazing way to connect without a screen.
Yes.
So we love it, and it's like fun.
It's fun. And we have to have these things where what we do can be very heavy and overwhelming. And, we were talking about, we only have so many hours in a week. We need to make time to do that kind of stuff. I think it's good for our brains. It's good for our family and our relationships. And it's so important to unplug. I love that.
And again, I think the natural unplug in today's world is like throw on the TV, which I love doing too. I love shows, but that quality time is so important. You only get so many hours, especially with young kids. I only get so many hours with them. And what can we do as a family with both of my kids and my 2-year-old and my 5-year-old and my husband, and be able to engage in quality time together. It's such a good tool to get there. And there are other, puzzles, et cetera, that can get you there, but we love Lego for that purpose.
I think it's great. Just a great way to be present with your family, and so many wins there that you get out of that. Well, what I'd love to do is ask you kind of one more question here that I like to ask everybody is, what is lifting you right now?
Oh, great question.
Right.
What lifts me? I guess I'll go personal.
Yeah, that's great.
I think it's like who lifts me. I think one is like my husband. I think he's such a partner in our relationship and our friendship and our family, and like shares the burden. My son has strep today. He's home with my son, and he also works. So, I think sharing that burden in the household, I think is really important. And some days I'm more involved, some days he's more involved. So that balance. I recently heard some doctors talking about how picking the right partner is like can elongate your life.
Oh wow!
Because of less stress and whatever the reasons
team,
are.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I believe that. I think I genuinely enjoy being around him. He's funny and smart, and I can run my professional hurdles and also my personal hurdles by him. So he always lifts me up. And in general, I think rejuvenating my cup is hanging out with and spending quality time with people I love, my friends and my family, my kids. And I think it also spills into work. I think problem solving and working through things, conflict management, when you're working with other really smart people who help lift you up and help lift the answer and help work together. I think that's so motivating, and that's what got me through these like grueling hours in consulting too, was like the people I'm working with are so smart and these are such interesting problems. So I think that's such a critical factor for me, and turning around businesses and growing businesses and thinking through problem solving is being surrounded by a great leadership team that works really well together.
Well, it sounds, I know I like to play in the longevity space, and those are two things that they talk about. One is having great relationships, right?
Yeah.
Family, friends, business, that piece. And then also having a real large sense of meaning and purpose, which solving those problems like energizes you. I can hear it.
Yeah.
I think that's so amazing. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been like a fantastic conversation. I love to hear all of your perspectives on manufacturing and leadership, especially somebody who gets to see the industry for so many interesting angles. I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, it was great chatting. Excited to listen to your other episodes as well and hear some more hacks and thoughts in the industry from your other guests. So appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Of course.
What a privilege to get an inside look at the trends and direction of the manufacturing industry. For more on Rachel and Thomas, check the show notes below and give us a subscribe if you haven't yet. And don't forget to always lift.